I entered this scene through rejection and honesty. Nerds weren't mean, they were weird, and that worked for me after 10 years of teasing.
Welcome to Sex, Sexy, and Sexism, Fixing Gender Inequality in Gaming. Thank you for coming out Sunday morning. So this is Laura Croft from the 2013 edition, How Far She's Come from her origin in the 90s. Yay. Yeah. Some women have not fared so well. This is Samus from Metroid. She has lost a foot since her origin in the 80s, and I really don't know why that is. But we're going to be talking a lot about feminism today, and if you want to use the hashtag PAX Feminism, I'll be monitoring that during the hour and incorporating some of your questions and comments into this panel. And during the last 10-15 minutes, we will have open mics if you prefer to interrogate us that way. So first, a little bit about who we are and why I'm doing this. So my name is Ken Gagne. I am the host of YouTube channel Gamebits and co-host of the Open Apple podcast. I'm a freelance writer for Computer World and PC World, and I'm on the faculty at Emerson College here in Boston in the publishing department. Any Emerson alumni here? Woo! Sorry, volume. To your left is Susan Arendt, the managing editor of joystick.com. Hi, Susan. This is your seventh and final panel this weekend?
Yes.
You must be exhausted.
This last one. Can I give one other minor shout out?
Please.
Managing editor of Joystick, also co-founder of the takethis.org.
Yes.
I'm very proud.
Farther down the line, we have Tifa Robles, formerly of Wizards of the Coast, now of Microsoft, but here today as the founder of the Lady Planeswalker Society, an organization. An organization for women to learn and play Magic the Gathering. And you're out of Seattle, is that correct?
Yep.
Anything you want to add? Have I missed anything?
Well, I want to talk a little about what I do in the industry. So at Wizards of the Coast, I was a brand manager on Magic, and I left there to actually grow the Lady Planeswalker Society even more so. And now I work on the Xbox dashboard for both 360 and X1 at Microsoft.
Oh, sweet.
Thank you. Okay, this fine gentleman to my left is Duane and you don't work full-time in the gaming industry, so I'll leave it to you to explain what you do, because anything outside of gaming is beyond my ken.
I'm a media critic, activist. I do most of my work is in sexual assault, violence prevention. I do trainings all over the country, colleges, universities, athletes in the military. And I'm a lifelong gamer. Started playing the Atari and been playing since.
Thank you. It would be kind of awkward if you weren't a gamer. Show me your geek card.
Feel real out of place.
All right. And last but not least, we have Brianna Wu of Giant Spacekat, an indie development studio here in Boston, who this summer is releasing Revolution 60.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes. So if you don't mind me saying, Giant Spacekat is one of the very few, mostly female game dev teams in the industry. We have female engineers, female animators, female artists. We have a 18-year-old intern right now that, she wants to be a game developer, so we're bringing her in, teaching her how it's done. So that's what we're about.
Thank you. And fun fact, we did not meet in the gaming industry. We met last summer when I ran a Meetup.com event for a midnight screening of the film Serenity.
Yep. Oh, cool. That's right. We had ice cream. We were sitting there at this booth at JP Licks, eating ice cream. I never would have guessed I'd be there with you.
And there you were playing a game. I'm like, oh, whose game is that? And you're like, mine.
Right. We were trying to test a build, as we were wont to do.
So, fixing gender inequality in gaming is an issue that I became more aware of June of 2012 when I received an email from John Riccardi suggesting that I take a look at this Kickstarter by Anita Sarkeesian for Tropes versus Women in Video Games. There were 2 days left to go, and she'd already met her funding, but I threw my hat in because I watched her video analyzing video games from a feminist perspective, and I'd never really looked at games that way. I mean, I was, it's a joke how often Princess Toadstool gets kidnapped, and growing up with comic books, I was vaguely aware of women in refrigerators, but I hadn't really ever looked at video games.
Wait. Are you guys familiar with that term, women in refrigerators?
Susan.
No, you, bro. You brought it up.
It comes from a 1994 issue of Green Lantern when he first got his power ring, and it basically refers to any time that a woman is traumatized as a means to send the male protagonist on a quest to become a hero. The female character exists for no other reason than for that. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, pretty much. The character his girlfriend was literally in a refrigerator. Yeah, killed and put in a refrigerator. And it refers to doing something horrible to the female character to inspire the male character to act because he must defend her, whatever, you get the idea.
I wasn't going to be quite that graphic, thank you, but I probably should.
Honey, that's why you have me.
But I should. And that's why you're sitting next to me. I should warn that I can't necessarily predict all the issues that we're going to be discussing today, so this panel may require a trigger warning for those who need it.
Oh, fair point, yeah.
Right. So I saw this video that Anita posted on Kickstarter, and then I became aware of all the harassment she received as a result of this. And I was like, not cool, dude, not cool. And so I backed her Kickstarter, I saw the videos that came out, and in the 2 years since then, I've seen more and more news stories about this. Like Jennifer Hepler of BioWare, who worked on the script for Dragon Age 2, and she quit because, if you can read the fine print down there, she received graphic threats were made to kill her children because people didn't like her game. Carolyn Pettit of GameSpot wrote a review of GTA 5, gave it 9 out of 10, and at the end of the review, she mentioned that the game is somewhat misogynistic. And there were people calling for her to be fired, and far, far worse. Game Developers Conference 2013, there was a party hosted by the IGDA that Brenda Romero and Darius Kazim walked out of and resigned their membership in the IGDA because they had brought in some scantily clad dancers. The game developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlas, Dragon's Crown, on some very anatomically impossible characters. And unfortunately, the artist for this game didn't respond very appropriately. Yeah. And then Capcom, more recently, just a few months ago, talked about how their game that's coming out Deep Down will have no female playable characters because it doesn't work into the story. And even right here at PAX East last year, there was an issue where some Tomb Raider cosplayers were not treated appropriately by a supposedly professional journalist. And I don't think it's just that in the last 2 years the scales have fallen from my eyes. It seems more like this is becoming more of an issue, or at least it's receiving more coverage. And so I'd like to start by asking the panelists, is this an issue that we're just becoming more aware of and giving it the attention it warrants, or is this actually becoming worse of an issue, which is why we have more to cover about it? Susan?
Both, actually. Yeah. More people are willing to speak up about it. Women... for a long time, trust me, as someone who's been writing about video games for a long time, this has been going on, this is not new, but it was always just something you kind of accepted. Well, this is my job, guess the rape threats are part of it. But now, as women are getting more and more support, as more and more women are becoming a visible part of the industry, in all parts of the industry, in the tabletop industry, making the games, writing about the games, we're more willing to call bullshit on that and say, no, you don't get to talk to us like that. So there is that, and calling attention to that. And still to this day, with my colleagues, my educated, worldly, knowledgeable, experienced colleagues, things still happen and they go, I can't believe someone just said that to you. So there is this ongoing education that, yes, this still happens, but in combination with that, I think there is a certain segment of the greater gaming community that feels threatened by this continuing empowerment of women and calling on the bullshit, and really, wants to have the He-Man Women Haters Club stay the way it is, and that is causing them to act out even more. So I think it's actually a combination of factors why this keeps coming up. And to play devil's advocate, it gets clicks. Yeah. I cannot say that 100% of the coverage that happens is good-natured. Some of it absolutely happens because clicky, 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 traffic good. Yeah. So let's just be honest about that and just accept that as part of the overall situation. But
if I could add to that,
Yeah.
like I think something that's really cool is I feel like we finally hit a critical mass. Like with Twitter, you can get these issues out there in a way that you really didn't before. And I also think like in the industry, you finally hit a point where women are almost 50% of the gamers out there. We're reading coverage. People tell me sometimes it's hard to find talented women in the industry. I'm inundated with engineers, artists, animators, people that are eminently qualified to work in game development. And I think we're just rising up through the ranks. But I wanted to say, come to something you were talking about, Ken, at the beginning of it. Something I could not have anticipated when I got this job were the rape threats, death threats, assault threats I would get. I did a piece at the beginning of this year talking, it was called Game of the Year, Why Women Won't Be Voting for Game of the Year. And I had people, I was stunned by it. This is the first time it ever happened to me. I'm sure you've been dealing with this for longer.
Oh, yeah.
People looking up my address. People sending that to me, telling me they're going to meet me in an alley and rape me.
getting satellite photos of your house, that's always fun.
Yeah, it's to threaten you. Like that's the best I can come up with, that they feel...
It's to silence you.
It's a silencing tactic.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they're very threatened with the idea that their culture, this gamer culture, could change.
Yeah.
And they're right to be scared because it is changing.
Yeah.
So that's the way I feel about it.
Tifa?
Yeah, I definitely see the same sorts of things in the tabletop industry. Magic the Gathering's player base is 90% male. So
Is it that much?
It really is.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's actually getting, there are more female players in the last 5 years than there was in the rest of Magic's history. So it is becoming a better percentage of the audience. But because of that, when 90% of the population doesn't have to think about the problem,
Right.
and then when it comes up, a lot of times the response is, oh, well, it's like, this isn't a problem because I haven't seen it. And that just makes it acceptable behavior, and there's a lot of subtle sexism.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't
benevolent
see
sexism.
that.
Yeah.
And they don't understand. And it's not until it's like very clearly laid out to them that they can even try to understand it.
Can I add on to that? Because I think this is if there's one message I could get to the guys out there in the audience today, sexism in 2014 is not a Mad Men moment. It is,
Right.
it's very rarely someone coming up and making a pass or something like that. That happens. That absolutely happens. The way that sexism happens to every woman on this panel every day is a much more subtle thing. It is having your opinion invalidated.
Yeah.
It is when people leap into a conversation and minimize or try to dismiss your lived life experiences. It is minor comments that happen. We were talking about an interview that we had, and someone came up and kind of had a very leading question with an agenda. And it's not anything it's not a Mad Men moment. It's this thing with people that haven't really thought through, I hate the word privilege, but I think it's accurate here. They haven't thought through the privilege that they have as men in this industry. And they bring unconscious attitudes to it, and they will minimize your opinion or disregard it or talk it down.
Well, and when you sit across the table of someone at a Magic tournament, they immediately see that you're a woman and think, oh, she's not good at the game.
Yeah.
She's either like a brand new player, or she's here with her husband because she wants to spend time with him. Nobody assumes you're there for the game. And more than that, they assume you're going to be bad at it.
Yeah. I run into that as a game dev professional. I can't tell you how many professional industry events I've gone to and people have asked me if I'm a marketer or if I am in charge of HR. I'm a software engineer. I can talk about frameworks, APIs, 3D stuff, Unreal Engine with anyone. And I'm constantly assumed that I don't know stuff. And it is exhausting to deal with.
Yeah.
Duane, do you want to talk a little bit about why guys are doing this and what it is that they're so afraid of and what it says about them?
Well, first thing I think that I don't work in the industry, so I'm sort of looking at this more as, the perspective of somebody who plays games. But I don't think that there's any coincidence that at the same time that depictions of female characters are getting more graphic, more naked, whatever, women in the industry are experiencing greater amounts of things like death threats and rape threats and that sort of thing. These are connected issues and not two separate things happening at the same time. And so I think it's really, again, it comes down to oftentimes as change happens, there is a backlash that happens. And we see this, giving, again, an outside perspective. The game industry isn't the only place where this is happening. The same things are happening in television, movies, all those industries. We see a lot of the same stuff happening. And so, it's reflective of a larger sexism that occurs in society. The fact that we're in a time of great change, and lots of people are starting to challenge these things and reconsider gender roles and all that kind of stuff. And there's a contingent that is just completely uncomfortable with that is very much backlashing against that. So these images and the experiences that you're all having are very much connected.
But are we actually proposing to take away these games? Do we want to stop making the GTAs and the Dead or Alive Beach volleyball games?
Okay, that is a good volleyball game, okay? I stand by that. Yeah, okay, the Venus costume, okay, it's ridiculous. We all know that. It's ridiculous. But that was a damn good volleyball game.
I would, I'm not somebody who would advocate censoring anything or anything like that. I feel like most people in these conversations, it's about having a diversity of stories and images and
a diversity of body types.
Yeah.
I'm tired of looking at the same pair of boobs over and over and over again.
I think ultimately it's about consumer choice. I mean, you're talking about, do we want to get rid of the GTAs? I would go so far as to say, as pornographically awful as Dead or Alive is, and, or Ivy and Soul Calibur, I don't want to get rid of that as a feminist. That's not my goal. I recognize that is something that is always going to exist. My goal is not to censor that. What my goal is to get more women involved in the game development process, meaning the management, meaning in the journalism side of games, which I think is huge, the lack of female journalists. And from that, I think will spring it's about diversity. It's about having a greater amount of people represented in games, so that when I go buy a game, I can find something with someone that looks like someone I can identify with.
Yeah.
So it's more about that choice.
And I know this isn't the focus of the panel, but the same is true for race. I'm
Sure.
tired of black characters being the tank. The song, it's like, we need diversity of stories in all arenas of gaming. And I think as people, I find it interesting too, because I think as gamers we're all asking for, more realistic stories that don't just give us these sort of, good or evil and sort of real simplistic choices. Give us some more complex stories. And, the same thing has to be true with depictions of all people.
Yeah, well, and I want to say something about, you brought up race. I'm completely white, grew up in a white town, but my husband is Mexican. And when we got married, and when we plan on having children, I realized if we have a daughter, not only will she have to deal with not having representation of females in games, but also, how many Mexicans or Hispanics can you think of in video games
that are at all positive?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then, just the thought of that is really sad to me.
Yeah.
But, she'll have to deal with that on top of the things I know I deal with as a gamer.
Yeah. I sometimes imagine, as frustrated as I get being, a woman in this industry, how angry I would be if I were an African-American woman in this industry. I mean, can you name a main African-American female character? Because you sit around and think of a game.
Clementine.
Yeah, it's very limited. And I think when we as feminists, or at least when I as a feminist talk about it, I think we need to be very careful to remember there are other people out there that are dealing with issues. It's the same playbook. It's the exact same playbook. It's the exact same people doing it. It's just two different groups. It's also to gay gamers.
Well, and I work with LGBT a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm in the diversity hub this weekend. Yeah. And it's nice to see all those other groups because we all have the same goals.
Yeah.
All of us. We just want equality. We just want to be treated with respect in this industry.
Absolutely.
Speaking to the lack of female game journalists, one reason why I would like to see more of that, other than it would let me talk about shoes more. Seriously, you cannot have the what shoes do I wear to PAX conversation with your male colleagues. You just can't. I love Dead or Alive. I love the games. I think they're fun. Yeah, the women are completely over the top and completely, sexualized. For me, the difference there is about intent.
Yeah.
Because there is no artifice there. They are there to be hot, right? I also worship at the altar of Titanfall because I get to play as a female pilot who's wearing real armor. You can play as a woman of color, so it's, and I get to say those things because I'm female. And people will take it more seriously. And I feel like male game journalists don't get to say, hey, I love Dead or Alive, without being like, yeah, of course you do. But it speaks to about having a selection and having a variety and having a lot of choices. Like, yes, sometimes I would like to be the little girly, super helpless character. And sometimes I would like to be the complete bitch who's going to come kick your ass. There should be a variety. There should be lots of different definitions of sexy. Sexy should not just be the blonde with the skinny waist and the big boobs. But I feel like when men say these things, they don't get taken seriously, and that it perhaps carries a little more weight when a female game journalist says it.
Tifa, you mentioned you work with the LGBT community, and that brings up a good point that when we talk about having more choices in gaming, that doesn't just mean more women. It means it's not just a binary choice, men and women. I mean, Mass Effect let you choose between male shep and fem shep, and it's a spectrum in between there. So we need more choices on the entire spectrum.
We really do.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to be seeing those voices here at PAX. Because we need to spread the awareness in order for the change to happen.
Mm-hmm. And Susan, you talked about, sometimes you don't always want to be, the petite, cute blonde, and this might be a good time to talk about Revolution 60, where, these are... So on the left is a character from Soul Calibur 5, and on the right is your character from Revolution 60.
Absolutely.
And to the superficial observer, these might look the same.
They might. I think it's all about intent. I created these character models myself, and at least I did the design. And it's like Susan, I can't help but notice your Twitter avatar is Vanessa from Piano 3, which is a game I love. Yeah. Piano 3 really influenced my game. Do you have a picture of her avatar?
I have the.
Let's look at that. Let's look at that.
See if I can get it to play.
But do we have video of Vanessa? Yeah!
Anyway.
All right, so you get the idea. I have to say, looking at that GameCube era, as a technical person, I'm just picking apart how far we've come since then. But, so the difference is, Vanessa and Holiday both have very skin-tight outfits. Yep. But the difference to me is, when I played Piano 3, I saw someone I could imagine myself as.
Yeah.
She's cool, she's badass, she's prolific. Yeah, she's awesome. Yeah. And the difference is all about empowerment and intent with the character. But this comes to a story I want to tell about this PAX convention. So you see Holiday, actually our Holiday cosplayer came today. This is Deanna played Revolution 60, and she loved the character of Holiday, and she's someone that's really skilled. I mean, if you could talk to her about the way she painted the costume. So for her, as a cosplayer and as a gamer, you're a hardcore gamer, and you see characters that you like, and you identify as them, and there's something in them that strikes something to you. And yesterday at PAX, she's out there, just doing your cosplay thing. And a guy comes up to you and says, hey, can I touch your ass?
Whoa.
And, I think this is a real mistake that I think guys in the industry sometimes make, is if they see a pretty character, they think, like, this is something for me. Like, this is all about me or my sexual needs, or if a woman is pretty, she's automatically there for you. And I think, like, a more nuanced message that's so important to get out there is you can be a pretty game developer, you can be a pretty character in gaming, and sometimes it's just all about us as women and what we identify as.
Yeah.
So, I used to be a cosplayer.
Yeah.
My nickname's Tifa. I've been going by it for 8 years now.
Right.
And I get a lot of flack because Tifa's known for her chest.
Right. Yeah.
But, like, that's not the reason that, I, like, let people start calling me that name, and eventually took it on myself.
She's a great character.
She's a powerful character that I could relate to as a young girl.
Right.
Like, I started playing that game, I guess I was, like, 10 when the game came out, and started playing it, as a young girl. I didn't think about that.
Right.
Like, I thought about this awesome character on screen that, I wanted to be. And then it was funny that somebody in college started calling me that name, and I was like, I do want to be like that. And when I cosplay as her, I received similar comments and, found photos on the internet that I was like, I can't believe somebody had that angle on me.
By the way, the answer to "Can I touch your ass" is "Can I kick your balls?"
Like, no, not now, not ever, or something like that.
More or less, more like, no, you can go now.
Yeah.
The thing about, and the point that we're making here, and the thing about Vanessa, because, okay, hands up if you've played Piano 3. I love all of you, okay? It's not a very well-known game, it's not a very well-played game. It's a shooter, but Vanessa has to go into this facility, the machines in it have gone haywire, and she has to destroy them all, and they're all trying to kill her. She puts on her shades and her headphones, and the reason she's going like that is because she's bopping to the music while she's doing it, and she's dancing while she's doing her job, and she's killing some robots, and she is just having a badass time. She doesn't feel threatened. She's not scared. She has complete ownership of who she is and what she's doing. Oh yeah, she also happens to be hot. And that's not a bad thing. At some point, this idea that women should be sex objects got turned into women should never want to be attractive.
Right.
And that's crazy, because why are we spending all this money on makeup and at the gym if we don't want to be attractive?
Can I, sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
I actually want to diverge from the rest of the panel on this point of intention. I don't think intention as a designer matters. When you make any piece of art, when you produce anything, once it's left your studio, your hands, whatever, you have no control over how it's received.
True.
And so I think you need to think about when you're designing characters, my intention, the designers of Dead or Alive, and their infamous jiggle physics.
Yep.
I think yes, their intentions are clear, and I think people need to understand that. Again, you can say this was my intention in making this character, but you need to understand that as people are playing that character, they don't necessarily know that.
But
right? They're perceiving.
That's fair. That's fair.
And I would just say, to me, the difference between like the Revolution 60 character and the butt next to it.
Is that Ivy? Who is that?
First off, we see the full character, right?
Yeah.
So the character has personhood. And, wearing skin-tight clothes, if you're talking about, all the characters, male characters wearing skin-tight clothes, that's one thing, right? But wearing, armor into battle that doesn't, which is, you were talking about games that you love. I'm a huge fan of XCOM, partly because of this, right? The female characters are wearing the exact same armor, right? And so that's a game where you don't have to debate what's the intentions of the designer here. They're making a game about soldiers going to war against aliens. They all have the proper equipment, right? And so I don't have to sit and debate what was the intention here.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Can I say something about that? Because I do agree with you. Once it's out there in the zeitgeist, it's up to the people. I completely agree with you. That said, the difference in our industry and other industries is men are so overwhelmingly part of the conversation. Right. There are, I'm not going to name the names of these journalistic, enterprises, but take your pick, and there are very few women on staff, and many of them. looking at these games, reviewing these games, commenting on these games, setting the culture for these games, talking on podcasts about these games. I can't tell you how many times I've watched a video with 4 white guys sitting there, opining on some feminist issue. So I do agree with you, it's out there for people to judge for themselves. The difference is in our industry, men, and specifically straight white men, lead the conversation so much that that's the main angle that gets out there.
One thing I want to ask about is, according to the ESA, 45% of gamers are women. That's a huge contingent. And yet there are still organizations out there that ignore this. Machinima, one of the largest multi-channel networks on YouTube with I think over 1 billion page views a month, they target the 18 to 34-year-old male demographic specifically, and most of their content is gaming oriented. In my own YouTube channel, only 17% of my viewers are women, and I have millions of views, and over 80% of it is all from guys. So there's sort of a disconnect here between what YouTube users are actually seeing and what the ESA says is out there. Now, obviously, the ESA is correct because I can see you all here, but at the same time, the industry is growing massively. It is so strong.
Okay, I need to make a really important distinction, okay? There are game players, okay? People who self-identify as gamers, who play games, who consider video games to be an important part of their lives, okay? Then there are people who consume video game content on the internet. They watch YouTube channels, they read video game sites, they have video game blogs. These are 2 different groups of people. This is a very small subset of the real people gaming. This group is overwhelmingly male. This group is much more evenly mixed.
Right.
So this is why it seems like, oh my gosh, like all the gamers why are they all such jerks? And I don't get it. It is a vocal minority, and that is something that, because we kind of tend to be in a bubble, and we're in this area, and we do read this content or create this content, we kind of forget that the most people playing games aren't reading about them, aren't writing about them, aren't watching Let's Plays. That it's actually a relatively small group of the greater gaming consciousness doing that.
Well, and I think we need to question why is that the fact? Why is it the fact that it's mostly men? And I think because gaming is sometimes not a welcoming place, as we're talking about, right?
Sometimes.
For women. And so it's there's a reason that those two are the same.
Yes.
That those two are connected. I think more women would be watching gaming videos on YouTube and blogging, commenting, and doing all that kind of stuff if it wasn't what we're talking about.
I know many.
If it wasn't Tilt or GTFO.
I know many highly qualified female journalists that are out there. They're at PAX this weekend that are producing video blogs, that are producing content. They're writing reviews. It's just breaking in the door at some of these wider known houses and getting that opportunity and being represented in the mainstream. So I would posit that there are many women out there doing that.
Right. But if the industry is focusing on men, then the industry is growing despite or because of that focus. So what incentive is there for the industry to shift when it seems to be doing okay from a financial perspective?
Shame?
Being able to sleep at night?
I would argue that it's in their financial best interest. I really would. We were trying to get slides together on this for some of the playtesting of Revolution 60, and one of the approaches we took from the very beginning is, look, 50% of the people that are going to be buying our game are women. According to the stats, we're going to have our playtesters represented by 50% women. And we did this, and we found what we believe are some really interesting trends in the industry. So we found every time that we made a gameplay decision that kind of took away this "you're not welcome" sign from gaming, that made our game more inclusive to people, that kind of made people sit through a tutorial or making the gameplay mechanic more simple. What we found is hardcore and typically male gamers literally would voice kind of resentful opinions about that. And what we would find is, women, especially casual gamers, the kind that do consume this content, responded extremely positively to this. So I think it's like changing the entire conversation and in the way we develop games and cover games to kind of make it a wider audience. Because I think once you do that, I think it welcomes more people in there, and I think that's when you're going to have, more women reading content. Like Joystick, I think you guys excel at this, getting a wider point of view out there.
Thank you. It's incredibly important to us. So.
The more people you can reach, the more sales you're going to have.
Yeah.
And like a lot of times, I think companies just don't realize that.
Yeah.
And it seems like something that would be really easy to realize, but I know from an industry standpoint that they do focus on that demographic, 18 to 24 males. And it's like, if you widen that, you're going to get more people. You're going to make people feel more welcome to come play.
Yeah.
My group is completely built on the fact that the Magic community is not welcoming for female gamers.
Yeah.
There's nothing about the game of Magic that women don't like.
Right.
It is just the fact that you have to go into a store and get treated like you don't belong there in order to play. And like, why would you do that to yourself? So I've created a place where women can come play and not have to worry about all of that. And if video games could start doing, like, having things like that, and, sounds like your group very much does this, has a place where women can go work and make a game that is welcoming to everybody.
I mean, we're only so big, but we really take that very seriously.
Yeah.
Bringing in interns and trying to create a place where women can come and, like, we had an employee that had a child last year, 2 years ago, and creating a work environment where she can have a child and still stay in game dev. That's not the usual course of events. And
that's not the course of events in business, period, the end.
I think it really speaks to the need for women in editor positions. I think it really speaks to the need for women in management.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence I don't have kids.
Yeah. No, I don't think I could do my job if I had kids.
No, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way. Well, nobody's going to buy The Last of Us if they put Ellie on the box.
Right.
You guys know what I'm referencing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this absurd idea, and it's insulting to men, frankly, that if you have strong female characters, if you put a female on the box, guys won't buy the game. Guys won't buy the game if it sucks. If the game's good, put a cat on the cover. They don't care. They just want to have fun. Like, it's insulting to everybody, really, this notion that you have to have the big hulky white space marine on the cover or your game won't sell.
Yep.
We're not dumb. If your game's good, we'll buy it. I swear to you. Shut up and take my money.
So, Duane, let me ask you, this is not a boys versus girls issue.
No.
So what is it that men can, how can they help contribute to fixing this issue, and why should they? Because, they already have this great gamers club of all these guys that they can hang out with, and what is the strength that comes from expanding that, and how can they fix it? Because we've had a lot of tweets asking, okay, we want to make clear that not all guys are dumb idiots, and they are also concerned about white knighting and riding in to rescue the day and just screwing things up more. And as Susan pointed out, a lot of these guys, they're not, if they are making sexist comments, they may not be aware of it. It may be unintentional.
Yeah, like everybody knows the really bad sexist stuff, like, can I touch your ass? Like someone sees that and they go, oh, no, you didn't. No. But something that just happened to a colleague of mine, Alexa from Polygon, she was at GDC. The two main prominent groups of people at GDC are game developers and game journalists. Odds are, if you are there, you are one of those two kinds of people, right? She meets somebody who doesn't know her. She says, hi, I'm Alexa from Polygon. He says, oh, do you handle their community management?
Wow.
He had and another colleague of mine, again, an experienced, educated, decent man, had no idea why that was a problem. And I'm like, well, do you see how that could be a little humiliating or diminishing, that he leapfrogged over developer, over reporter, to community management because she happens to be a cute girl?
Well,
and then the light bulb went off. So, yeah, in a lot of cases, it's just the thought process has never happened. And once it goes down that route, then it seems obvious. But if you've never dealt with this yourself, you've probably just literally never had those particular neurons firing.
I think it's the same way with engineering issues. I can't tell you how many engineering job, postings or times you talk to engineers and they will talk about engineering issues with the masculine pronoun. I don't know if you saw this on my Twitter, but there was a job posting 2 weeks ago where they put a woman naked in bed, in their job posting.
Yeah.
There's so many of these assumptions, and the aggregate effect of it is it's a big sign that says,
You're not
no
welcome.
girls allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think white manning is a bullshit term that's used to shut people down. The reality is that that's one of the only ways that this is going to change. Men, people in power and positions of privilege need to challenge other people in positions of privilege, right? So it happened.
I just want to say one thing. You're not an asshole innately if you are in a position of privilege.
Right.
Okay? You're made to feel that way, but you can't help it if you were born a white dude. Okay? You just were. But now it's your responsibility to not be an asshole.
Again, I don't think we can emphasize enough that that's only part of the equation. We have to challenge each other.
Right.
Men have to say, if a man is standing next to a guy who says to a cosplayer, "Can I touch your ass?" Right? It shouldn't only be her who's making a response. Right? That guy needs to say that to the other guy, "You're being a dick. Don't talk like this." Right? If you're a coworker with somebody who makes statements like that or says, "You know what would be a great idea if we put a naked woman in our job posting," then you need to say to that coworker, that's not. Right? And the reality is that you risk being accused of white knighting in those moments because, again, that's what I'm saying. It's used to shut down those exact moments, right? But that's one of women aren't in the rooms that are full of only men. And so we have to challenge each other on this and say that this isn't right. And so that's one of the biggest ways that men can, have an effect on this. And then, of course, I think we often forget the power of our dollar, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that, you have a choice in what games you buy. And it might be hard to resist buying that awesome new game, right? But if you really have a point that you're trying to make, you say, "Hey, I'm not going to purchase this game, and here are my reasons for it." Tell people those reasons. Tell people why you're making those decisions. They may join you, they may not, right? But to change these types of things, we all have to take a stand somehow, and just think about the little ways that we can do it in our lives.
Yeah. So I have a very personal connection to the idea of men being involved in this. My group is not female exclusive. We actually have 30-40% males participate, and that includes, my husband's the co-organizer. He helps me do every event that I run. He packed all of my stuff for PAX. I couldn't do this without him. And on top of that, we have guys who come help teach at conventions and stuff like that, and it's really important. But I get all this internet hate and threats and stuff like that, saying that I'm sexist, saying that I'm only making the problem worse before they even read anything about my group. And it's because the word lady is in the name of my group that everybody assumes, oh, this is an exclusive group, and she's a man hater. And no, as I said earlier, I want equality for everyone. It's a safe space for anybody to come to, and if we didn't have men there supporting us, it would never be taken seriously. And I understand that. The best things that have happened to me and my group are that when a pro player for Magic, who is a man, says, "Hey, this group is awesome," and then suddenly they have all this support. And I'd never get that by myself because I'm just a woman. And then that's the problem, and that's not going to be taken with any seriousness.
I feel like my guy friends out there that get it, my friend Steve is here today. Steve has 3 daughters. And, Brianna's talked on Twitter or app.net about feminism, blah, blah, blah. It's a day of the week that ends in Y. But when, Steve stands up and tells people hey, this is something you really need to think about. I really appreciate that because he's doing it as a peer. And his voice carries more weight because it's like a guy saying to another guy, hey, you need to knock that off.
Right.
And we really need you guys as allies. And being a feminist doesn't mean you turned in your man card. It means you get it. Like, you're awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there have been studies that show that like men that are feminists actually have sex more often.
Right.
And not necessarily with women, by the way.
But it's like, if you're an ally, like, we desperately need you.
Yeah,
and
true.
I'm really asking for your help here. We can't fight this war by ourselves.
Yeah, we need all the voices that we can get.
We really do.
And those voices need to be as diverse as the problem is.
Thanks for setting up this panel, by the way, Karen. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to hear you all saying that because demographically, I'm the least qualified person to be up here. So speaking of multiple voices, we want to open up for Q&A, so if you want to line up in front of one of the two mics. But while you're lining up, I want to address one more question that came up on Twitter to Susan and Brianna. Is being a game dev and being pregnant incompatible? And can you have kids in this industry?
It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a lot harder because you figure when you're out for maternity, that is at least 2 months. You are not in the office. You're not working. You have vanished. That is like light years in this industry. And then, of course, you kind of want to spend time with your kid. And however much things have changed over the years, women are still the primary caregivers of children. And so it is far more difficult for a woman raising children to advance significantly in this industry.
Well, if a couple wants to have their own child, they don't have a choice in who does that.
Yeah,
If I could make my husband pregnant, I would do it.
You hear that, Michael?
I can only speak for myself, but I am working my ass off in this industry and fighting these battles so women that come out after me can have a child and can have a freaking career here because things have got to change. We have got to set policies that are sensible. My lead animator, Amanda, she's invaluable to me. And like being a mom isn't a handicap. It gives her a deeper perspective. It gives her an extremely valuable perspective in what we're doing. And I treasure the work she does that much more because of it. And we need women that are allies in management. We need men that get it and understand these unconscious attitudes that push women out the door. So I'm working my butt off to make it so you can have kids in this industry.
Thank you. Let's go to the questions. Start with right here.
Hey, my name's John. Also a big fan of 3.
Yes!
I wanted to ask you though, I remember pitching that game and 14-year-old me and my hormones were really happy that the final unlockable outfit is a tube-top G-string and a garter belt when she's not wearing anything that would be holding up.
Yeah.
So for no reason. Can you guys talk about what you think about that being the end game?
You also die in one hit if you're wearing that armor.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, so I'm cool with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
go on.
I don't really have a problem with a 14-year-old boy going,
I'm 24 now, so it's different.
But I have a problem with a game designer making that an option.
I do too.
yeah.
That was the point that Vanessa seemed disempowered to me. It seemed taking away her awesomeness.
Yeah, I agree.
It bothered me too.
Yeah.
But, I'll take what I can get someday. This was, 2002? So,
it's an older game, so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Hi guys. First of all, I think it's great that we can just have this conversation. I think we've come a long way in that sense. Anyway, the question is, when I play games, I sort of compartmentalize them in my mind. Like if I'm going to play The Last of Us, I know I'm going to have an experience that's, I'm going to learn a little bit about human condition and, it's going to be an emotional experience. It's going to be very fulfilling. But sometimes I just want to put in GTA and drive down the sidewalk in a dump truck and run people over. And I think maybe this is controversial, but I think that's okay too, because it's good to have a safe place to have that release of whatever, of that violence or whatever the controversial topic happens to be, as long as it's safe and it's not out in public or in the real world. So my question is it okay for that to exist with sex too? Is it okay to have women sexualized through video games? as long as people are understanding that it's not reality.
It's about not only having a single representation of women. Yes, it is perfectly okay to have a video game with sexy fembots in it. It would be really great if we also had female secret agents and scientists and teachers and firefighters and, all sorts of, like, the entire range. It's what?
Sexy man bots.
And sexy man bots. Check out the ads on that man bot. Yeah, it's about there being more than one thought.
Yeah. So if there's, because we're not there yet, we're making progress, but I mean, would you say it is wrong at this time for a developer to make a game where women are sexualized, men for that matter? Is that wrong at this point because the status quo is not where it needs to be? Like, should the industry mature more before we see?
I would like them. Here's what I would like from developers every time they're like picking a main character, because I very strongly believe that some characters should be men, and I very strongly believe that some characters should be women. And you got a lot of characters. You know what? It could go either way. It doesn't really matter. On those situations, stop and actually have a thought. What kind of options do we have for this character? That is what I would like to see more. I think there's a lot of default thinking happening. I don't think it's wrong per se to have a particular kind of character or representation in a game. What I think is wrong is when that was just the first thought they had. And it's not what could we do and how could this go? And you know what I mean? Like when there's not more effort put into the consideration.
Well, and sexuality can be represented in so many different ways. And like it can be empowering, it can be uncomfortable. Like there are so many different things you can do with it. And I think as long as you're making that choice, like what does the scene mean for the story, for the game, instead of just hey, we can do sexier, right? Like that's what matters to me.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name's Eric.
Hi, Eric.
I'm in a class in my college right now it's a game writing class, and for our final project, I'm working with two other guys. In the game we're working on, we come up with the idea of a sci-fi shooter. We play as a woman, and later in the game, we had the idea that maybe she's trying to find long lost daughters, and all out Kill Bill. And but like we're a bunch of three white guys, and I'm wondering how long would it be if there were a game that covered something like maybe the emotions of like motherhood or something like that hasn't really been tackled in games before.
I know there are independent games that tackle different, take a chance at exploring those sorts of things. I'm forgetting the name of it. I read about a game recently where you play as a slave woman who's a mother, and she's trying to rescue her child or something like that. So, I feel like independent game developers are really taking chances that the big AAA title makers aren't. And the hope is that, eventually that sort of sifts its way up, right? But I think they're really pushing the boundaries when it comes to this stuff and pushing, the guy talked about the status quo, what we think of as the status quo.
Yeah.
Well, I was at a panel recently that somebody brought up, like, mothers and how in games a lot of times their storyline ends when their child grows up, or, like, they don't do anything besides raise children. And I actually asked everyone in the room, and I'm going to do now, how many of you feel your mother is a powerful person? Yeah, that's a lot of women that, like, you could have a story about somebody who's done raising their children, who's a mother, who goes, like, on some badass mission to kill people. Like, that would be a great story that I think most people would want to see.
Self-pimpage here. I did a PAX panel called Parents as Characters, where we talked about that a lot. There's video of it online, so Google that, and there you go.
All right. Thank you. Unfortunately, this panel ran so long that we don't have time for any more questions, but I do want to get at least one woman question. So thank you to the enforcers for allowing me just a little bit of overtime.
Sorry, boys.
Two things I really wanted to say. Especially with male allies, I'm so happy for some human here, and I just wanted to thank you, Duane. Your website's awesome. I think it's Dude Allies done right. There's a lot that aren't done as well. And the fact that you enable Twitter questions for women who are very frequently more shy or not as confident to come up and ask questions, I think is also really awesome. But my question was, how do we address or push the conversation on a lot of slut shaming that happens in gaming and in cosplay. How do we turn that conversation more into like women empowering themselves and not being as like women wanting attention, like for like women on women, like hate and empowerment, and then also like having each other's backs as women in a way that men can't get on us and how we do. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's really, really key to get women involved in the game development and story making and every aspect of it. Because from that comes the kind of sex positive, inclusive, the kind of conversation you and I could have together versus maybe you with someone else. And I think that tone comes very naturally when you have diversity in the game development process. So I really think that's the key to getting that. And I think it's incredibly important.
There's no one right way to be female. We get told a lot that in our community, there is this very much dismissive notion towards being girly, being sexy, wanting to be pretty, and it's disgraceful to me. There is no one right way. If you're super brainy, awesome. If you want to go out in 3-inch heels and a miniskirt, rock on. Just go do you. And if someone has a problem with that, that is their problem.
I would just add one thing about that. I think a lot of times slut shaming is a result of feeling like this depiction of womanhood is a threat to. It encourages men to treat me that way. So because it's really a sort of, for women, it's often a self-protection thing, right? Sort of like, I'm gonna, I don't want that put out there as this is what I am, and so to protect myself, I'm gonna shame this woman. I think people need to understand that those aren't connected, right? Whether how a woman is dressed and who she chooses to sleep with has nothing to do with patriarchy and the fact that sexism is going to exist regardless of that. And so we need to. I think if people could understand that a little bit more and be a little bit more supportive of each other. And then again, I would just reiterate what I said earlier about men in those situations also standing up and saying, "Hey, that's slut shaming. Shouldn't do that."
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jess.
So thank you all for coming. It's really encouraging to see so many people interested in this issue, especially at PAX. Keep the conversation going. We applaud. Don't be a dick. Be excellent to each other. And the more people we have in this industry, the more gamers we have to game with, the more people who are passionate about gaming, regardless of their gender, race, age, or looks, the better off we all are. Thank you.
I've got nothing to prove. I've got nothing to prove. I've got nothing to prove.